Darius Wade was 38 years old, and until that Friday afternoon, he believed his marriage was simply going through a quiet season. He owned Wade Electrical, 12 years of pre-dawn job sites, calloused hands, and every dollar accounted for. He wasn't loud about what he'd built. He never had to be. That day, he came home early from a rained-out job to find a black Mercedes G-Wagon in his driveway that he'd never seen before. Inside his house, at his kitchen table, eating his food, was a man named Broderick Shaw. Expensive watch, tailored shirt, the kind of smile that assumes it owns every room it walks into, and standing at the counter like nothing was wrong, was Darius's wife. What Broderick said next, standing at Darius's front door, was the most expensive mistake of his life. He looked Darius in the eye and said, "She's mine now. You can keep the house." In the 10 seconds that followed, Broderick Shaw learned something nobody had ever bothered to teach him. Quiet men are not weak men, and what came after those 10 seconds would cost Broderick everything he thought he owned. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The crawl space smelled like old concrete and standing water. Darius Wade didn't mind. He'd been working in worse since he was 19. He lay on his back in the dark, 6 inches of clearance above his chest, feeding a length of 3/4-inch conduit through a notch he'd cut in a floor joist 30 minutes ago. His headlamp threw a pale circle of light across the belly of the building. Pipes. Dust. The ancient skeleton of a midtown office block that nobody had touched electrically since 1987. He moved without rushing. That was the thing about Darius. He never rushed. "Conduits through," he called toward the access hatch. Marcus, 23 and still learning to read a blueprint without turning it sideways, stuck his head down. "You want me to pull from up top?" "Not yet. Let me seat the coupling first." Darius pressed the fitting together with both hands, feeling for the click. He did it by feel as much as sound. 12 years of doing this in the dark had made his hands something close to instruments. Okay. Pull. Slow. The conduit moved smooth, clean, right. Darius allowed himself a small nod that nobody saw. By the time he climbed out of the crawl space, the sun had cleared the downtown skyline and was hitting the building's glass face at an angle that made the whole street look like it was on fire. His crew, Marcus, Jerome, and 2 subs from a company he'd used 3 times before, were set up on the 2nd floor, pulling wire through the runs he'd mapped out the previous week. Jerome was his lead. Had been for 4 years. He handed Darius a cup of coffee from the thermos, without being asked. "2nd floor's on schedule," Jerome said. "Good." Marcus clipped a wire nut on the panel rough-in. "I caught it." "You tell him why it matters?" "Twice." "Tell him a 3rd time." Darius sipped the coffee. It was still hot. A man needs to hear a thing enough times before it stops being a lesson and starts being a habit. Jerome nodded. That was the end of the conversation. No frustration. No drama. Just the job, moving forward. That was how Darius ran things. Wade Electrical had started in the bed of a second-hand truck with $200 worth of tools and a subcontracting agreement that paid $32 an hour. No investors, no inheritance, no shortcut of any kind. Just Darius showing up on time, doing the work correctly, and charging a fair price, over and over, for 12 years, until the reputation built itself into something a bank would finance and a general contractor would call first. The office was a modest suite in a strip mall near downtown. His name was on the door in clean block letters. His license was framed on the wall above Patricia's desk, right next to his state certification, and a photo of the first commercial job he ever won on his own bid. He didn't look at those things much anymore. They were just true. The house was the same way. A solid 4-bedroom in a neighborhood that had been climbing steadily for 6 years. Not a mansion. Not trying to be. But the roof was his, and so was every foot of wire in the walls, which he'd rewired himself the second year they'd moved in. Angela had teased him about it at the time. Who rewires their own house, Darius? But she'd said it warmly, then. There was a version of her from those early years that he still kept clearly in his memory, like a blueprint he no longer needed to reference, but couldn't bring himself to file away. He got home at 6:15. The front door opened into a short entryway that looked through to the kitchen, and then past the kitchen to the sliding glass door and the back porch. Angela was on the porch. He could see the back of her through the glass, one hand around a glass of white wine, the other holding her phone pressed flat against her chest. The moment she heard the door, she turned. The phone disappeared behind her back. Then she seemed to remember herself, and she lowered her arm naturally, like it had been there the whole time. "Hey," she smiled. "You're home early." "Same time I'm always home." "Is it?" She came inside, kissed him on the cheek. "I lost track." She moved past him toward the kitchen. Smooth, easy. A woman who had recovered quickly from something and did not want to examine what that said about her. Darius watched her go. He said nothing. He went to the bedroom, washed up, and came back to the kitchen, where she was already warming something on the stove and asking him about his day with the comfortable rhythm of a woman who had decided the moment had passed. He answered her. He ate dinner. He listened to her talk about a staffing issue at the hospital. He did not ask about the phone. Later, he hung up her coat by the front door, a habit of his, not hers, and felt the slight weight in the left pocket. He reached in. A gas station receipt. The timestamp read 7:14 p.m. on a Tuesday, 11 days ago. The station's address was on the far side of a neighborhood, 40 minutes from their house, 40 minutes from her hospital, and 40 minutes from anywhere Angela had ever mentioned going. He stood holding it for a long moment. Then he set it on the counter, face up, and went to bed. He didn't sleep right away. He didn't toss. He didn't stare at the ceiling with his jaw tight. He just lay there in the quiet dark beside his wife, and he paid attention. 3 weeks. That's how long it took Darius to be sure. He didn't rush it. Rushing was how men made mistakes, how they accused the wrong thing, cornered the wrong moment, and ended up looking like the problem instead of finding it. So he watched. He catalogued. He kept everything in a small, locked part of his mind, the way he kept a job's specs. Organized, current, not touched until he needed them. The second phone charger showed up on a Wednesday. He found it in the side pocket of Angela's gym bag when he moved it off the bench in the garage to make room for a toolbox. A white cable, USB-C, still in a plastic sleeve, like it had never been opened. Angela's phone was an older model. It charged on a different cable entirely. He put the bag back exactly where he found it. He said nothing. The Tuesday-Friday pattern took a little longer to see clearly. She had always worked late occasionally. Hospital administration wasn't a 9-to-5 world, and he'd never questioned it. But 3 weeks of paying attention showed him a shape. Not random late nights, specific ones. Every Tuesday. Every Friday. Home by 9:30 or 10. Smelling faintly of a restaurant or a bar. Never a hospital. Not once mentioning a colleague's name, a meeting, a project. Just late. The wardrobe was the thing he almost said something about. He came home one Thursday to find 4 new shopping bags stacked at the foot of the bed. 2 boutique names he didn't recognize. One he did. He stood in the doorway looking at them. Angela was in the bathroom. He went to the kitchen, made himself a drink, and thought about what a man buys new clothes for. Not for work. She had work clothes, not for home. He put the glass in the sink and went out to the garage and organized a parts bin that didn't need organizing until he felt like himself again. The Friday the rain came in. It came in fast. By 7:30 in the morning, the sky had turned the color of old iron, and the wind was moving hard enough to knock scaffolding loose. Darius made the call before 8. Pull equipment. Go home. I'll call when I've got a new schedule. Jerome had the crew wrapped up and cleared out by 9:15. Darius drove home without thinking much about it. Rainouts were part of the business. He would catch up on paperwork, maybe pull permits for the Henderson job, eat lunch at a reasonable hour for once. He turned onto his street at 9:42. Angela's car was in the driveway. That was not unusual by itself. She didn't start until 10 on Fridays. What stopped him, before he even got to his own driveway, was the other vehicle. A black Mercedes G-Wagon parked tight behind Angela's car. Big and clean and expensive. Chrome-trimmed, private plates. He didn't recognize it. He sat for a moment at the curb with the engine idling, rain tapping the windshield. Then he pulled into the driveway, shut the truck off, and went inside. He was quiet about it. Not sneaking, just himself. The way he always moved. The sound hit him before the sight did. Angela was laughing. Not the polite, tired laugh she brought home from work. Something looser than that. Something he hadn't heard in a long time. It was coming from the kitchen, and there was a low voice underneath it. A man's voice, easy and self-assured. The kind of voice that expected rooms to arrange themselves around it. Darius came around the corner and stopped. A large man sat at his kitchen table, wide across the shoulders, built like someone who paid for the best gym in the city and actually used it. Tailored shirt open at the collar, sleeves rolled to the forearm, a watch on his left wrist that cost more than Darius's truck. He had a plate in front of him. Food from Darius's refrigerator, the leftover rice and chicken Angela had packed into containers last night. And he was eating it like a man eating in his own home. Angela stood at the counter with her wine glass. When she saw Darius, the laugh stopped. Her face moved fast. Surprise, then something that might have been shame, then calculation. And finally, like a door swinging shut, defiance. The man at the table looked up. He didn't startle. He didn't flush. He smiled. "I'll handle this," he said. Not to Darius, to Angela. The way you'd say it about a contractor who'd come to fix the sink. He stood up slowly, unhurried, and extended his hand across the table. "Broderick Shaw. Angela's told me quite a bit about you, man." Darius looked at the hand. He did not take it. The silence in the kitchen was total, except for the rain against the window. Broderick lowered his hand without embarrassment. His smile adjusted, but didn't disappear. He looked at Darius with the patient, faintly amused expression of a man who had never once in his life believed he was in the wrong room. "Get out of my house," Darius said. His voice was quiet. It was always quiet. Broderick tilted his head slightly. "I think we should probably all—" "I said get out!" Something moved behind Broderick's eyes. Not fear. Recalculation. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair and shrugged it on, taking his time with it, smoothing the lapels. He looked at Angela. "I'll call you." Not a question. Not even a promise. A statement, flat and certain, like a man checking a box. He crossed the kitchen. He crossed the entryway. Darius didn't move. Didn't have to. Broderick had enough space to walk past him, and he used it, which was its own kind of message. He reached the front door, opened it. The rain came in cold. Then he turned. He looked at Darius with something that had graduated from amusement into contempt. Slow and deliberate. The way a man looks at something he has already decided doesn't matter. "She's mine now." A beat. The smallest shrug. "You can keep the house." He smiled. He turned to step off the porch. He didn't make it. Darius closed the distance in 3 steps. There was no yelling, no warning, no wasted motion of any kind. His left hand found Broderick's collar, and his right found his belt, and he walked, deliberate and straight. And Broderick Shaw, who outweighed him by 40 pounds and had mistaken silence for surrender his entire life, went off the porch like a man who had no say in the matter. He hit the front walkway hard. Both knees, then one hand, the watch face catching the concrete edge with a crack that was audible over the rain. The suit jacket split at the shoulder seam. He sat there for a full second, stunned in the way of a man whose body has done something his mind hasn't caught up to yet. Darius stood on the porch above him. Rain hit the steps and ran off the edges. Broderick looked up. Whatever he had expected, rage or tears or the kind of frightened anger that a man could laugh off later, it wasn't this. A still man looking down at him without heat, without performance, like a foreman assessing a problem that had already been resolved. Broderick started to rise, started to pull the shape of his authority back around himself. You're trespassing." Darius's voice hadn't changed. "The next call I make is to the police. The call after that is to my attorney." Broderick stood. He straightened his jacket, or tried to. He looked past Darius toward the doorway. Whatever he saw there, it was not the thing he needed. He turned. He walked to the G-Wagon. He got in. He drove away. Darius stood on the porch until the sound of the G-Wagon's engine disappeared down the street. The rain had slowed to a fine mist. He could hear it against the leaves. He could hear his own breathing. He turned around. Angela was still in the doorway. She had her arms crossed over her chest, and her face had settled into something careful and unreadable. She was wearing the kind of expression a person practices. He had watched her practice it for years without knowing what it was for. He stepped inside, closed the front door behind him, stood 4 feet away from her. How long? Just that. 2 words. She held his gaze for a moment. He could see her deciding something, deciding how much was already known, calculating the cost of a lie against the cost of the truth, running numbers the way she always ran them. 8 months, she said. He nodded. Slow and once, the way he nodded when a supplier gave him a number he'd already figured out on his own. He looked at her for another long moment, not with heat, not with accusation, just looking. The way a man looks at something he is finally seeing clearly. "You have until Sunday," he said. "Arrange somewhere to stay." She opened her mouth. Something crossed her face. Not regret. Not quite. More like surprise that the conversation wasn't going the direction she had prepared for. She had come ready for a fight, or for tears, or for the kind of desperate negotiating that she could manage and redirect. She had not come ready for this. "Darius!" "Sunday," he said. He walked past her, down the hall, and into his office. He closed the door. The office was small. A desk, a filing cabinet, a corkboard on the wall with job schedules and permit deadlines pinned to it. A lamp he never turned on because the overhead was easier. He didn't turn either one on now. He sat down in the dark. Outside the window, the rain had picked back up. He could hear it on the roof, steady and even, the same sound it made on job sites when the work stopped and the waiting began. He sat for a long time. He wasn't numb. He could feel everything. It was all there, pressing against the walls of his chest like something that needed to get out. 12 years. The early years when they had nothing, and it didn't matter because they were building towards something together. Angela bringing him lunch on a hot job site, laughing at how dirty his hands were. The first year the business turned a real profit, how they'd gone out to dinner and she had reached across the table and squeezed his hand. All of it was still in him, true and intact, and the fact that she had made it into something disposable did not make it less real. He sat with all of it. He didn't rush past it. Then he picked up his phone, not to call anyone in anger, not to tell the story to someone who would listen. He opened the Notes app and he started typing. Dates first. The receipt from her coat. The gas station 40 minutes away. A Tuesday 3 weeks back. The charger in the gym bag. The Tuesday-Friday pattern. The shopping bags at the foot of the bed. He typed for 20 minutes without stopping. Sunday came the way Sundays do. Quiet at first, then heavier. Angela packed a single rolling bag and a duffel. She moved through the bedroom with her jaw set and her movements clipped, not looking at him directly. Her composure was intact, but thin, the way paint looks intact until you press on it. She carried the bags to the car in 2 trips. Darius stood by the front window and watched. He had nothing else to say. He had said the only thing that needed to be said, and she had heard it, and here she was, loading her car. That was its own kind of answer to every question he hadn't asked. She paused at the driver's side door and looked back at the house. He didn't know what she was looking at, the house itself, or something she was leaving in it, or some version of herself she was trying to locate one last time. Her face did something complicated that he didn't try to read. She got in. She drove away. He watched the street until it was just a street again. Then he went inside and picked up his phone. He called Jerome first. "You good?" Jerome asked immediately. "I need your eyes open," Darius said. "That's all right now. Just, if you see something, you tell me." Jerome was quiet for a half-second. "Understood." He called Patricia next. She picked up on the second ring, warm and careful the way she always was when she already knew something was wrong. "Monday morning," Darius said. "Quarterly review. 8 o'clock, if that works." "I'll be there," she said. He ended the call. He went to the kitchen. He sat down at the table, the same table Broderick Shaw had sat at, eating food from his refrigerator, wearing that smile. And he pulled a fresh legal pad from the drawer. He wrote 2 names at the top of the page. He looked at them for a moment. He wasn't angry anymore. He was organized. Darius got to the office at 6:30. The strip mall was still dark at that hour. The nail salon next door. The insurance office. The little tax place with the hand-painted sign. All of it quiet and locked up. The parking lot empty except for his truck. He unlocked Wade Electrical, turned on the lights, and started the coffee maker. Then he sat down at his desk and opened his notes from the night before. He had 3 pages by now. Dates, names, numbers he remembered from the joint account statements. He wasn't sure yet what he was building. He just knew that building required material, and that you collected material before you started framing. Patricia arrived at 7:58. She was never late. She came in the way she always did. Keys already put away before she reached the door, a folder tucked under one arm, reading glasses pushed up on her head. 9 years of Monday mornings. She knew where everything was. She knew the rhythms of the place better than anyone except Darius himself. She stopped when she saw the coffee already made, looked at him. He said, "Sit down, Patricia." She sat. He told her what he needed. All joint financial documents from the past year. Bank statements, loan correspondence, anything that came through the business with Angela's name attached. He kept his voice even, and his face still. Patricia set her folder down on the desk between them. She put both hands flat on top of it. "I've been sitting on something," she said. "I didn't know how to bring it to you." He looked at the folder, then at her. "Bring it," he said. She opened it. The documents were already organized. Of course they were. Patricia had arranged them in chronological order, paper-clipped in sections, with a handwritten index on the first page. She had been carrying this around, waiting, probably longer than she wanted to admit. 3 months ago," she said, "someone filed paperwork to refinance the home equity line of credit on your house." She slid the first document across the desk. "Your signature is on the application." Darius looked at it. His name, in blue ink, on the borrower line. He studied the signature for a long moment. It was close. Someone had been careful. "Where was I 3 months ago?" he asked. "Memphis," Patricia said. "The Callaway commercial project. You were gone the full week. I had your hotel receipts for the expense report." He nodded. "You never called me about a refinancing?" she continued. "You never sent me anything?" "There was no lender correspondence through the office account, which is where it would have come, because that's where we handle everything." She said it carefully, like a woman reading from a report she had already rehearsed in her head 100 times. I only found it because the lender sent a routine confirmation to the property address. It came in with the regular mail. I almost filed it. How much? Darius asked. $47,000. She said the number cleanly, without flinching. Accessed in 2 draws, 10 days apart. He was quiet. Where did it go? Patricia slid a second document across. A bank transfer record. The receiving account had Angela's name on it and an account number Darius had never seen before. She opened it 14 months ago, Patricia said. It's not a joint account. It's in her name only. I called the bank's general line this morning under the pretense of confirming a wire format. The account is active. Darius looked at the transfer record. $47,000, moving from the equity line into an account he didn't know his wife had, in 2 clean increments. He thought about the way Angela had stood at the kitchen counter on Friday. Composed, defiant, already somewhere else in her head. There's more, Patricia said. He looked up. She slid a third document across. This one was a lease agreement. Partial. She had only been able to pull what was publicly accessible through a record search, but it was enough. A residential lease, a condo building in Atlanta. The lease deposit line matched the amount of the first equity draw almost exactly. She wasn't setting up a life with Broderick Shaw, Patricia said quietly. She was setting up a life. Period. The room was very still. Darius sat back in his chair. He looked at the 3 documents laid out across his desk. The forged signature, the hidden account, the Atlanta deposit. Each one a piece of something larger that had been built in the dark, right next to him, while he was in Memphis, and on job sites, and asleep in the same bed as the woman who had built it. He thought about the word organized. He had written it on a legal pad 4 days ago, and told himself that's what he was now. He had not known yet how much he would need to be. He gathered the documents into a neat stack. He tapped the edges straight against the desk the way he did with blueprint pages. "Thank you, Patricia," he said. She nodded once. Her eyes were steady, but her jaw was tight. He put the stack in a manila envelope, sealed it, and picked up his keys. He drove directly to Warren's office. Warren's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown that had no signage on the outside. Just an address, the kind of place where people came when they needed someone who did not advertise. The receptionist knew Darius by face. She told him Warren was with someone. Darius said he would wait. He sat in a chair by the window and looked out at the city, and did not check his phone. 11 minutes later, Warren's door opened. A woman in a gray blazer walked out with a leather portfolio pressed to her chest. Warren stood in the doorway behind her, and when he saw Darius, his expression shifted. Not dramatically, just a small tightening around the eyes that meant he understood this was not a routine visit. Warren was 60 years old, compact, with close-cut gray hair and reading glasses that lived permanently on his face. He wore dark suits every day of his working life. His office smelled like old books and printer ink, and every surface in it was organized the way a courtroom is organized. Nothing decorative, nothing wasted. "Clear my afternoon," he told his receptionist. Then, to Darius, "Come in." Darius set the manila envelope on Warren's desk and sat down across from him. Warren opened it. He did not rush. He read the way he always read, completely, without interrupting himself. His face showed nothing while he worked through the documents. He moved Patricia's handwritten index to the side, read the refinancing application, studied the signature, checked the dates against the second page, then the transfer record, then the lease deposit. When he finished, he set the papers down and took his glasses off and looked at Darius. "How long have you had these?" "Since this morning." "Who else has seen them?" "My bookkeeper. She found the lender confirmation in the mail 3 months ago and held it. She flagged the Memphis dates herself." Warren put his glasses back on. "Your bookkeeper is thorough." "Yes," Darius said. Warren tapped the refinancing application with one finger. This signature is not yours. No, someone went to some effort. He held the page up slightly, examining it. It's close, but the pressure pattern is wrong on the second letter. And whoever did it didn't know that you sign the D with a loop that breaks at the top. This one closes. He set the page down. A forensic document examiner would confirm it in 30 minutes. Darius said nothing. He had not known about the loop. Warren leaned back. The equity draw is fraudulent transfer. The forged signature is the mechanism. The receiving account, being in her name only, opened 14 months before the draw, establishes premeditation, not impulse, not a bad decision made under pressure. He said it the way he said everything, evenly, without decoration. This is documented. This is actionable. And this is recoverable. What does recoverable mean? It means the $47,000 plus interest plus legal costs becomes a claim against her assets in the divorce proceeding. It goes into the filing as a fraudulent transfer claim, which is a civil finding, separate from and in addition to the marital asset division. He paused. She will not be able to negotiate around it. It is a documented fact, with paper and witnesses. Darius nodded slowly. Warren opened his top desk drawer and pulled out a legal pad. He uncapped his pen. I'll begin the divorce filing today. The fraud claim gets incorporated from the start, which means the moment she's served, there is a court record of the transfer. She cannot move the Atlanta account after service without that movement becoming additional evidence. He wrote 2 lines without looking up. She gets served before she knows what's in the filing. Darius watched him write. There's one more item, Warren said. He did not look up yet. Tell me about your life insurance policy. Darius was still. What about it? Warren set his pen down. I'm asking because when I handle cases like this one, cases with a hidden account, a forged signature, a planned exit, I pull every document associated with the marital estate. It's habit. He looked at Darius directly now. 2 years ago, a change of beneficiary form was submitted to your life insurance carrier. It attempted to redirect the payout away from your named beneficiary. He waited a beat. It was declined. Incomplete paperwork. The room was very quiet. But it was submitted, Warren said. Darius sat with that for a moment. He thought about 2 years ago. He had been expanding the business. A new crew, a new truck, the Callaway contract just coming together. He had been busy and tired and trusting, the way a man trusts the structure of his own house. Do you want to pursue that thread criminally? Warren asked. No, Darius said. He said it without hesitation. Warren studied him. You understand what the submission implies. I understand it. He looked at the documents on the desk. I want it documented as a divorce exhibit. I want it in the record. I don't want a criminal case. I want a complete picture. Warren looked at him for a long moment. Then he picked up his pen again. All right, he said. He wrote it down. When he finished the page, he looked up. I'll have the filing ready within 10 days. Darius stood. He reached across the desk and shook Warren's hand. Firm. Brief. Take your time, he said. And do it right. The Sunday dinner tradition had started when Darius was 23 and didn't have a couch yet. Rudy had come over with a cooler of food and 2 folding chairs, and they had eaten on the floor of the empty apartment, while Rudy told him every mistake a young contractor could make and how to avoid each one. They had not missed a Sunday in 15 years. Not for holidays, not for bad weather, not for anything. Darius was not about to miss one now. He cooked what Rudy liked, smothered pork chops, rice, green beans with a little bacon fat. Simple food made carefully. He set the table the way his mother taught him. Napkins folded, glasses filled before anyone sat down. Keeping his hands busy kept his mind from running ahead of itself. Rudy arrived at 5:30, the same way he always arrived. Truck in the driveway, 2 knocks on the door, inside before the echo faded. He was 64 years old and still moved like a man who spent his life on job sites, wide through the shoulders, deliberate in his steps, nothing wasted. He wore a flannel shirt and work boots that had never quite lost their concrete dust, no matter how many times they'd been cleaned. He came into the kitchen, looked at the stove, and looked at Darius. "Angela here?" he asked. "No," Darius said. Rudy pulled a chair out and sat down. He didn't ask anything else until they were both eating. They got halfway through the meal before Rudy set his fork down and folded his hands on the edge of the table. "How are you holding together?" he said. Not "how are you doing?" Not "how are you feeling?" Rudy always said what he meant. Darius chewed, swallowed, set his own fork down. He told him everything. He started with the receipt in the coat pocket and went straight through. 3 weeks of watching. The G-Wagon in the driveway, Broderick at the table, the front walkway, the 8 months. He told him about Patricia and the Memphis dates and the $47,000. He told him about the Atlanta condo. He told him what Warren said about the life insurance form. Rudy listened. He didn't nod excessively or make sounds to show he was following along. He just listened. The way a man listens when he knows the person talking needs to say all of it before anything else. When Darius finished, Rudy was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I have to tell you something." His voice was different, quieter, a little heavier. "About 3 months before all of this started, before you knew who Broderick Shaw was, Angela came to see me." He paused. "Alone. Didn't mention she was coming. Just showed up on a Saturday morning." Darius was still. "She said she was thinking about their finances." "Yours. Joint stuff." Rudy's jaw tightened slightly. "She said she wanted to get a clearer picture of where you all stood, in case you ever decided to get a financial advisor involved. Said she didn't always feel like she had full visibility." He looked at the table. "She asked me whether I knew if you had savings or assets she might not be aware of. Business accounts, investment accounts, whether I thought you were the kind of man who kept things separate." The green beans were going cold. Neither of them reached for anything. "I didn't see it for what it was," Rudy said. She was smooth about it, made it sound like responsible planning. He looked up at Darius directly now. "I told her you were a man who kept everything above board, that whatever you had, she'd have access to, that you weren't the kind of man to hide money." He stopped. "I've been sitting with that ever since." Darius looked at him. "You didn't know." "I know I didn't know. Doesn't make it easier to say out loud." Darius looked down at his plate. He did the math quietly in his head, the way he did all his math, methodically, without rushing it. 3 months before Broderick, which meant Angela had been doing her assessment before she ever walked into whatever room she met Broderick Shaw in. She had been inventorying Darius, measuring what she could take, what she could convert, what she could walk away with. Broderick didn't cause any of this. He was a door she had already been building toward. He just happened to be standing in the frame when she was ready to walk through. Rudy picked up his fork again, then set it back down. He said it plain and simple, the way he said everything. "She didn't leave you for him." He looked at Darius steadily. "She was already gone. He just made it easier." Darius stood and collected the plates. He ran hot water in the sink and washed the dishes by hand, the way he always did. The sound of the water filled the kitchen. He washed each dish completely and set it in the rack and moved to the next one. Rudy sat at the table and drank his coffee and didn't try to fill the quiet. When Darius got home, he went to his office and opened the legal pad. He wrote down what Rudy had told him, the date of Angela's visit, the questions she had asked, the answers she had received. He wrote it in the same careful, factual way he wrote everything. Then he added Rudy's name to the document as a witness. It was Tuesday afternoon when Darius asked the question. Casual, almost offhand. They were standing outside the Wade electrical office, Jerome leaning against the hood of his truck with a cup of coffee, going over the schedule for the following week. Darius had a clipboard in his hand, but wasn't looking at it. "You ever work any of Shaw's properties?" he said. "Broderick Shaw, commercial developer. Big guy, drives a black G-Wagon." Jerome's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. "Shaw Development?" he said. "That's him." Jerome set the cup on the hood. He looked at Darius the way he always looked at him when he suspected there was more underneath a question than the question itself. Then he said, "Yeah, I worked 2 of his builds, sub through Delmont Electric, before I came on with you." "Why?" "Just heard the name somewhere," Darius said. "What was he like to work with?" Jerome let out a short breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "Like, work with? Man paid 63 days late on the first job and 90 on the second, and only because Marcus threatened to file a lien on him. The check came 3 days before the deadline." He shook his head. "He's slick about it, too. Always got a reason. Always real apologetic. Real professional on the phone. But the check never comes until you push." Darius nodded. He wrote nothing down. He just listened. "You know anybody else who worked his jobs?" Darius asked. Jerome tilted his head slightly. "How much anybody you want to know about?" "As many as come natural," Darius said. Over the next 5 days, Darius had conversations. Not meetings. Conversations. At job sites. Over lunch. In parking lots after the workday ended. He talked to an electrician named Curtis, who had done rough-in work on a Shaw warehouse in the South End. He talked to a plumbing foreman named Beto, who was still waiting on partial payment from a project that closed 8 months ago. He talked to a GC named Howard, 60 years old and meticulous, who had consulted on 2 Shaw projects and walked away from a third when the payment terms didn't add up. Each conversation was different. Each one pointed the same direction. Broderick Shaw operated on a simple and deliberate system. He stretched his payment windows as long as possible, 90 days, 120, sometimes longer, and used the money he owed his subcontractors to float the next project's startup costs. It was a rolling debt that only worked as long as the next deal was always bigger than the last one. The moment the pipeline slowed, the whole structure got thin, and the pipeline had slowed. Beto mentioned 2 civil suits, filed in surrounding counties, both from stiffed subcontractors, a concrete crew, and a mechanical contractor, who had pushed past the lien deadline and taken it to court. Darius got the case numbers from Beto without asking for them directly. Howard confirmed the suits independently, without knowing Beto had already mentioned them. 2 sources, same information, documented. Darius also learned something else from Jerome, who had heard it at a job site from a project manager who worked adjacent to Shaw's current operation. Broderick was in the final round of bidding on a city mixed-use development contract. A big one. $9 million. A whole corridor of storefronts, residential units, public-facing infrastructure. His first publicly funded project. The kind of contract that could refinance everything else he owed. He needed it. That was the word in the trades. He needs that contract. Darius called Warren. He didn't explain the full picture. He gave Warren the 2 case numbers and the names of the contractors. He told Warren there was a city contract bid involved and asked him to look at the timeline. Warren said he'd call him back by end of day. He called back in 2 hours. The consolidated suits, properly filed with the supporting documentation you described, would land directly inside the bid review window, Warren said. The city's Office of Contract Compliance runs a standard outstanding obligations check on every finalist. Unresolved contractor suits above a certain threshold trigger a review hold. "What's the threshold?" Darius asked. Warren told him. Darius did the math. Beto's outstanding amount alone was close. Both suits together cleared it by a significant margin. "I'll refer them to Ellen Marsh," Warren said. "She handles contractor fraud. She'll consolidate and file properly." "Make sure she knows the timing matters," Darius said. She always does, Warren said. Darius also made one other call, anonymous, to the city's Office of Contract Compliance. He gave them Broderick Shaw's company name, the 2 case numbers, and a clear statement of the outstanding obligation. He did not editorialize. He did not name himself. He simply provided the information in organized, factual language and let the office do what offices exist to do. He documented that call in his legal pad. Date, time, reference number the intake officer gave him. Jerome was in the office when Darius got off the phone. He had been doing paperwork at the second desk, but had gone still in the way people go still when they are paying attention to something they are pretending not to hear. He looked up. "You're not even sweating," Jerome said. Darius capped his pen. He set it on the legal pad and looked at Jerome evenly. "I'm an electrician," he said. "I don't touch live wire without cutting the power first." The call came on a Wednesday morning just after 7. Darius was in the driveway loading equipment into his truck when his phone buzzed on the passenger seat. He saw Angela's name on the screen. He set down the coil of wire in his hand, picked up the phone, and answered it. "I think we should talk," she said. Her voice was smooth, measured, the voice she used in professional settings, not the voice she used at home. In person, at the house, just us. Darius looked at his driveway, the oak tree at the edge of the yard, the patch of concrete he had poured himself the summer after they bought the place, because the original was cracked, and he didn't want to pay someone to do something he could do himself. "When?" he said. "This weekend, Saturday afternoon. I'll let you know," he said, and he hung up. He called Warren before he backed out of the driveway. Warren picked up on the second ring. He listened without interrupting while Darius explained the call. "She's heard something about the filing," Warren said. It wasn't a question. "That's what I figure," Darius said. "She'll come with an offer. Something that sounds reasonable until you look at what she's actually proposing." Warren's voice was even, unhurried. "Let her talk. Don't respond to anything substantively. Whatever she puts on the table, you tell her to bring it to me." "That's the plan," Darius said. "Good." Warren paused. "You doing all right?" Darius looked at the road ahead of him. "I'm fine." "All right," Warren said. "Call me after." Angela arrived at 2:15 on Saturday. She parked on the street, not in the driveway. Darius noticed that. He opened the front door before she knocked. She looked good, composed. Her hair was done, and she was wearing the camel-colored blazer she knew she looked professional in. She had dressed for a negotiation. Darius was in jeans and a gray Henley, and that was fine with him. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," she said at the door. He stepped back to let her in. He did not hug her. He did not shake her hand. He simply moved aside and let her enter what was still, legally, their shared home. She sat at the kitchen table. He sat across from her. He did not offer her coffee. She set her hands flat on the table and looked at him with the specific expression of a person who had rehearsed their opening. "I think we can resolve this without it getting ugly," she said. "I really do. We split the equity down the middle. We both walk away clean. No contested proceedings, no prolonged legal fight." She paused for half a breath. "These things can get expensive, Darius, for both sides. And the longer it drags out, the more it gets around. In business communities, in your industry." Another pause. "Careful. People talk. I don't want that for you." The kitchen was very quiet. Darius sat with that for a moment. He let the silence settle around her words, let it get a little heavy. She had laid out the offer like it was a favor, like she was doing him something. The language was polished, too precise for someone improvising. "People talk. I don't want that for you." That last line wasn't Angela. Angela was sharper than that. That line was someone telling her how to soften the threat, so it didn't sound like one. "Did Broderick tell you to offer me that?" Darius asked. He watched her face. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away immediately. She did something worse. She paused. "Just a beat. maybe 2 seconds, the length of a thought she was deciding whether to deny. And in those 2 seconds, she answered the question completely. "This is coming from me," she said. Darius nodded once, slowly. "Contact Warren," he said. "Anything you want to propose, you bring it through him. That's what he's there for." Angela's composure held, but something underneath it shifted, a tightening, a recalibration. She had come here expecting to negotiate with a man who was tired or lonely or afraid of what a long fight would cost him. She had not prepared for a man who was none of those things. She picked up her bag and stood. She moved toward the hallway, and for a moment, Darius thought that was going to be the end of it. He thought she was simply going to leave, and he was prepared for that. But he had one thing left to say. He had been carrying it for weeks, not because he needed to say it, but because it was true, and she deserved to hear it once. "Angela." She stopped. She turned. "You built something with me for 12 years, he said, "and called it nothing." His voice was level, not hard, not cruel, just clear, the way things are clear when someone means them exactly. "That's not my failure. That's yours." She stood in the hallway of their house and looked at him. He watched her for a response, not a counter-argument, not a defense, just something. But there was nothing there. Whatever she had prepared for this meeting, it had not included that. She turned and walked to the front door. She opened it. She left. Darius listened to the sound of her car starting in the street. Then he picked up his phone and called Warren. "She came with the split equity offer," Darius said. "Implied my reputation might take a hit if this went long." "Textbook," Warren said. "Broderick wrote it. She just read it." Warren was quiet for a moment. "The filing is bulletproof, Darius. Everything is documented. The signature, the draws, the Atlanta account, the insurance form. She has nothing to negotiate with that changes any of it." "I know," Darius said. "We proceed as planned," Warren said. "We proceed," Darius said. He hung up and set the phone down on the kitchen table. The house was quiet around him. His house, still standing. He went back to work. The notice came out on a Thursday. Darius was on a job site in the warehouse district when Jerome texted him a link to the city's procurement announcement page. He read it standing next to a panel box, one hand still holding a wire nut. "Shaw Development Group. Disqualified from bid process pending compliance audit. Outstanding subcontractor obligations and financial irregularities referred for review." He read it twice. Then he pocketed his phone and went back to work. Jerome found out more by Friday afternoon, the way tradespeople always find things out, through the network of men who build things and remember exactly who paid them and who didn't. Broderick's primary lender had begun an accelerated portfolio review the same morning the bid decision went public. Two of his properties, a mixed-use building in the South Quarter and a partially developed lot near the convention corridor, had entered deferred maintenance default proceedings by the end of the week. The $9 million contract was gone. And without it, the wall Broderick had been using to hold everything else up had nothing behind it anymore. Jerome told Darius all of this on Friday afternoon, leaning against the hood of his truck in the lot outside the office. "His whole house of cards," Jerome said. Darius nodded. "You good?" Jerome asked. "I'm working," Darius said, which was answer enough. Broderick showed up on a Tuesday. Darius was at his desk reviewing a materials estimate when Patricia knocked twice on the frame of his open office door. Her expression said everything before she did. "There's a man in the lobby," she said. "Says he doesn't have an appointment." "I know," Darius said. "Send him in." Patricia looked at him for a second, then turned and walked back down the hall. Broderick Shaw came through the door 30 seconds later. He wasn't wearing a tailored shirt. He had on a sport coat over a plain white button-down and dark jeans, put together, but not the way money puts a man together. The watch was different, too. No cracked face on the old one, just a different watch entirely. Simpler. And Darius noticed because Broderick was the kind of man whose accessories had always done half his talking. There was a tightness around his eyes now, the kind that lives in a man's face when he's been doing math in the middle of the night and coming up short every time. He walked in and looked at the office, the plain desk, the file shelves, the framed contractor's license on the wall, and something about the way he looked at it told Darius he'd expected something smaller, something easier to dismiss. Jerome was visible through the glass partition, seated at his own desk, watching without watching. Broderick stopped on the other side of Darius's desk. He did not sit down. "You did this," he said. His voice was controlled, but just barely. "The subcontractor complaints. The compliance tip. You put that together." Darius leaned back in his chair. He let Broderick stand there. He did not confirm it, and he did not deny it. He simply let the man finish. "I know it was you," Broderick said. "And I'm telling you right now, that is tortious interference. That is actionable. You think you can coordinate a hit on someone's business and walk away from it clean?" His jaw was tight. "I will bury you in litigation. I've got attorneys who eat contractors for breakfast." Darius looked at him. Then he reached across the desk and pulled a manila folder from beneath the materials estimate. He opened it slowly, without ceremony, the way a man opens a file he has opened many times before. He took out 3 documents and laid them across the desk one at a time. First, 2 civil judgment records, payment defaults, Broderick's name on both, in black and white. Second, a set of subcontractor liens, signed, filed, dated across a span of 18 months. Third, a deposition transcript, 12 pages, the relevant passage already marked with a small yellow tab. Darius slid it across last and turned it to face Broderick. The highlighted section was a question-and-answer exchange from a civil deposition. The witness was listed as Marcus Tillman, project manager, Shaw Development Group. The question was simple. Were payment delays to subcontractors accidental or intentional? The answer, in Marcus Tillman's own words, under oath, was 4 sentences long. The first one was enough. It was standard practice. Mr. Shaw called it cash management. Darius folded his hands on the desk. "Sue me," he said. "Warren's number is on the card." He slid a business card across the top of the documents. Broderick did not pick it up. He looked at the papers. He looked at the deposition transcript. He stood there with the tightness around his eyes pulling tighter, reading what was in front of him. Not just the words, but the shape of it, the completeness of it, the fact that every piece was already in order and had been for some time. He looked up. He looked at Darius the way a man looks at something he failed to account for. Not with rage now, with the particular stillness of a man who has just understood too late that he was never the most dangerous person in this room. "You planned all of this," Broderick said. Darius held his gaze. "You came to my house," he said, "and told me she was yours." His voice was even, quiet, precise. "I didn't plan anything. I just stopped ignoring what was already true." Broderick stood there a moment longer. Then he picked up his sport coat, straightened it once, and walked out of the office. He didn't come back. The conference room at Warren's office was quiet, except for the sound of a pen moving across paper. Darius signed where Warren pointed. He didn't rush it. He had spent 12 years building something with these hands, and he figured the least he could do was be fully present for the moment it was legally sorted out. Angela sat on the opposite side of the table with her own attorney, a younger woman in a gray blazer who had done her job competently and without drama. Angela was composed. She looked like a woman who had decided, sometime in the past weeks, to simply get through this. Her composure was the kind that costs something. Darius could see the price of it in the set of her jaw. The civil fraud finding had been clean and total. The forged signature on the equity refinancing was not a gray area. It was documented, witnessed by Patricia's records, and confirmed by Warren's forensic review, and the judgment required Angela to return the full $47,000 plus penalties and legal fees. The money came from the Atlanta condo's equity, the same account she had built her exit strategy around, the one she had used his signature to fund. That account was now nearly empty. The condo itself was gone. The house stayed with Darius. There was a moment, near the end of the signing, when Angela looked up from the document. Her eyes moved to him briefly. She looked like she might say something. Not an apology. Darius knew her well enough to know it wouldn't be that. But something. Some version of an explanation. He looked back down at the page in front of him. Warren pointed to the last line. Darius signed. He capped his pen. He stood up, shook Warren's hand, nodded once at Angela's attorney, and walked out of the conference room without looking back. 14 months passed. They passed the way good months do when a man is working. Not slowly, not fast, but full. Wade Electrical won a $1.4 million contract for a mixed-use development in the East Corridor. The same corridor where Broderick Shaw's project had died in a compliance audit and a stack of unpaid liens. The contract came through a competitive bid process. No shortcuts, no connections, just 12 years of documented work done right, and a reputation that had outlasted the noise. Jerome ran the job as foreman. He had 2 crews under him now, 12 men on a given day, more during peak phases. And he ran them the way Darius had always run things. Clear expectations, no shortcuts, and every man paid on time without being asked twice. Jerome had earned the title the same way Darius earned his business, by showing up and being trustworthy under pressure. Patricia had taken on client intake alongside the books, which meant she was now the first voice people heard when they called Wade Electrical. This was not an accident. She was organized, direct, and constitutionally incapable of letting anything slip through a crack. The company had 4 full-time employees and 12 regular subs. It was not large, it was healthy. There was a difference, and Darius understood it better now than he ever had. One Saturday morning, Darius drove to Uncle Rudy's house before Rudy was up. He parked a new truck in the driveway, a dark green Silverado, clean, loaded, no frills that Rudy wouldn't want, and left the keys under the mat. The card on the seat said 4 words, Sunday dinner's still on. Rudy called him that afternoon. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. What drifted back about the other 2 came the way things always drift back in a city where people share the same trades, the same streets, the same general orbit. Angela had moved to a smaller hospital system across town, a mid-level administrator role. Not the career collapse some might have hoped for, but a quieter life than the one she had been building toward. She was alone. The Atlanta condo was gone. Whatever future she had been constructing while she was still sitting across from Darius at breakfast every morning had been taken apart, piece by piece, in a conference room. Broderick Shaw's development company had gone through formal restructuring. He didn't go bankrupt. He was too skilled a manipulator of appearances for that. But the downtown penthouse was gone, and so was the G-Wagon. And the men in the trades talked about him the way they talk about someone who is no longer worth watching. He and Angela had not lasted. Darius heard that from Jerome, who heard it from someone, who heard it from someone else. He didn't dwell on it. He met Felice at a contractor expo in March. She was a landscape architect with a booth 2 rows over from his, and she had walked over to ask him something specific about underground conduit clearance for irrigation systems. The question was smart. The conversation that followed lasted 40 minutes and made him late to a vendor meeting he forgot to care about. They had been to dinner 9 times since then. 9 easy, honest dinners where the conversation moved without effort and nobody was performing anything. She asked him real questions and listened to the real answers. He liked that she found things funny. He liked that she didn't fill silence with noise. He was not in a hurry. On a Friday afternoon in October, Darius finished a site walk at the East Corridor job and drove home with the windows down. The city moved past him, the sound of it, the warm October air carrying cut grass and exhaust, and something faintly like rain that hadn't arrived yet. He turned into his neighborhood, the one he had lived in for 9 years, the streets familiar enough that he drove them without thinking. He pulled into his driveway. He put the truck in park. He turned the engine off. He sat for a moment with his hands still on the wheel, and the quiet settling around him. He thought, briefly, about the man who had stood on his front porch and smiled and said, "She's mine now." He thought about the 10 seconds after. Then he got out of the truck and went inside. He had built something. It was still standing.